been a while since the last video, but someone asked me a question online and I wanted to talk about it a little bit because it is kind of a deep part of the expat experience, if you will. So the question was, kind of amidst such giant life changes, how do you find the experience of making new friends, and how does that work out, and what's it like? So there's a transformation that happens, I would say, after you are no longer fighting that 5 or the 405 freeway and the stress of being in California. So, a deconstruction that happens. And I maybe touched upon this in the other video, but I want to share some stories that helped me, and it's an ongoing transformation. That old expression, wherever you go, there you are. So you bring this with you, but it does help to lose a lot of the distractions, at least for me. So 4 years ago, when I set out to leave California, actually I went to Wyoming first before I left California, but when I left Wyoming, I think 2017, around there, I wanted to get my son sorted out in school, so I did that at university. So he faced 4 years there, had kind of this 4-year window that's now just had the anniversary. My first step was to get him settled, which I did, and I needed a base a bit for my company, which I did that also here, and that's here in Lugano. And this was happening while I was also taking care of my, all the application, the delays at that time, and the timing of the application for my visa in Portugal. Because of the Schengen rules, the 90 days in, 90 days out, and it really meant that you had to stay in Schengen. For the time you were in Schengen, you couldn't be there longer than 90 days. So before that 90th day was up, I would leave. And most generally, I would go to Croatia. I would go to Split, Croatia, a place I just happened upon through Airbnb. The little apartment looked interesting, and I'd never been there, so it was kind of on my bucket list. So I said, well, what the hell, and I did. So I remember very well when I left Switzerland at the Zurich airport. The lady, who was very prim and proper and kind of stern, said, "So you've been here 89 days. You have 1 day left." And I go, "Yeah, I'm playing by the rules." And she said, "Well, that's cutting it close. Enjoy your trip." So I decided, well, I'm not going to travel from Zurich on those days, take any risks at all. So after Zurich, after that little experience, I decided to only travel from Madrid, Lisbon, Milan, more or less. It was just easier. I mean, I was always playing by the rules, but I just didn't, it was like, come on, lady. It's like, I'm doing it right. I'm playing by the rules. Anyway, I arrived in Zagreb and took a shuttle flight to Split. What an incredible experience. Arrived in Split Airport. The host of the Airbnb, a wonderful guy, picked me up with such hospitality, picked me up at the airport. Wouldn't take any money or anything, and besides the rental fee at the place. And immediately we talked for like 2 hours once I was at the place, and I mean at this beautiful inside the Diocletian's palace in Split. And Split is like this 2,000-year-old older, right, Roman outpost kind of. And it's basically this palace that was the summer home for Diocletian, anyway, Caesar, one of the Caesars. So it's incredible, this place. So I arrived, and we talked for the longest time just about life and culture and how things were different. And I told him about my bit of my life, and he told me about his. And he was a radio manager in Zagreb, and so we shared this love for music. He was a DJ. Anyway, you just kind of start curiosity about other people. So that was the first friend I made in Split, was actually the more or less landlord, the host. Just a wonderful guy. And then I go, well, I'm here for 3 months. I don't know anybody. What the hell am I going to do? And I go, well, I grew up much of my life was in Santa Barbara, and I'm kind of a coffee freak, so I'm used to spending time in Handlebars or Breakfast, or these are two places that are regular joints in Santa Barbara. So I just said, well, I'm going to do the same. So I tried to find a place that was suitable. I quickly found a place called D16 in Split, which at that time was I haven't been there in a while, so I can't attest to how great it is now, but it was great, that's for sure. And I started going there every day. There it's very different. And you have rules so that generally you wouldn't get your bakery, like here it's in Lugano, it's called a brioche, which is, we would say, croissant in California. And there you would go to the bakery first, get your whatever you're going to get, and then take it in a little bag to the coffee house, and then you sit in and get coffee at the coffee house. I guess it's probably having to do with licensing, perhaps. And so every morning I got to know the nice lady at the bakery. She always knew what I wanted. I learned some language. Some hvala means thank you, and dobar dan is, good day. So I tried to learn some Croatian. And they always laughed but everyone there more or less speaks English, so maybe it was a joke that I was trying to learn, but still it was wonderful. Then at D16 I would arrive, and I would just sit there, more or less by myself, and work on whatever I was trying to work on or occupying my time. Mostly it was still about business. I'm a publisher of vintage posters from around the world, and so I was often looking or researching or anyway, enjoying the hunt for some new art to publish. And after a while, you just got to know people. I can't really explain it. And the Croatian culture, people are there, they hang out for 2 or 3 hours. Coffee is not 5 minutes over there. And it's just incredible, just wonderful, especially, I guess, in the wintertime when people are less busy, or in the off-peak season, which is usually when I would go, because Split was just it's just too many people during the summer. So what I wanted to share was a couple of things that happened of the time there. I mean, sometimes I do some outrageous things. And one time I remember I'd already been kind of deemed a local, I guess, after a while, after a couple of months. And one day I just kind of, the evening was wearing on. And what happens there is the apero or bar kind of starts, maybe 4 o'clock. And so people would be having beers or some kind of aperitif. And so I remember it was a little bit quieter down. There were only the workers and a couple of locals. And I basically said, hey, guys, I have a question for you. Is your life better now than your parents' life under Tito during, when it was all Yugoslavia? And they just, these, like, what the heck is this guy talking about? What? But everyone answered, and it was fascinating, just fascinating. Half said that it was indeed better, and with more freedom but more opportunity, I guess. The other half said there was too much opportunity, and so it was hard to make decisions. So it was kind of easy to get a little bit frozen. And in a young person, that's incredibly difficult time. It's hard enough being in your 20s, not knowing what you're going to do, and not sure about your future. Then you add all that layers. My point is that we're all of different cultures, right? And we all kind of bring our own homegrown, generational, maybe brainwashing. And the expat experience of leaving what you know, and at least for me, I have very few expat friends. So mostly they're locals or other cultures, but very few American friends, a few, but one or two. But mostly they're locals, and it really opens your mind incredibly to just listen, you know. And I would walk around Split, you know, and again during wintertime when there's really very few tourists, and I might, you know, these incredible narrow hallways and passageways, and I'd hear music, you know, or I'd look up and I'd find this music school and different instruments from different windows coming out. And I remember, you know, you just never would get that in LA or maybe in New York, you would, but not in California. And then I was realizing I would see the parents bringing the kids, learning the music, and I go, you know, there's just something that happens when you slow down and when you're not chasing, if you're like typical in California, you know, or in Santa Barbara, for example, you know, a one-bedroom apartment it's hard to find a one-bedroom for less than, I don't know, $2,500 or $3,000 or $3,500 and so all of a sudden that means you got a net, you know, $5,000 or $7,000, and then your car payment, and then the gas, and then the insurance, and the DMV, and the registration, and all of this just piles on to the point that at the end of the month you go, what the hell is, you know, what happened? The pressure that happens from that, I have found after leaving, by cutting one's costs and by being open to other things that you never thought of before, life changes and it gets so much easier. And my point is, back to Split, when you can hear the beauty of the music coming from a window up above you, and you see these 2,000-year-old, highly worn sidewalk pavers, and you realize all the people that have been there, and all the dreams and the hopes and tragedies and all the life that was just lived, you go, wow, there's so much to be learned from a whole other culture. And so I want to share one thing. The time I was in Split, I have met friends of every, let's say, ism. I mean, far right, far left, center, whatever, every kind of ism. And I had this expression I learned after a while, that what really matters is friendism, right? We each have, you know, our deep-rooted things, I suppose, or our parents, or how we maybe rejected the ideology of our parents, or one thing or another. But I found that through this expat experience, tribalism still exists, and it still is alive in me, and I still espouse some of the thoughts of my father, and because they became some deep-rooted ideals, I guess, of my own. But you are kind of in this process of deconstruction. You listen to others all the time, and one guy who's become one of my very best friends is a man I met there, who lives inside they call it the Get when you're there. I guess during the war, this would be during the national war, like after the Second War, the war after Yugoslavia broke up, and he lives in the Get. And someone told me that he had the same printing equipment as myself in the factory in America that I still have, and. So naturally I go, oh, my posters, I could easily print them here. That's interesting. I'll open up a whole other market, blah, blah, blah. What can we do, blah, blah, blah. And all of a sudden, this part of me, you know, of finding the next opportunity that's so inbred in all of many Americans, and certainly business people like me, immediately, you need to meet this guy. So I think the barista or someone set it up. I went to meet this guy. We sit down talking. I'm telling him all about my business and kind of, you know, passion for art and this and that. And he was also an artist. And he stopped me. He said, Richard, I'm not interested in business. I'm interested in friendship. And I remember I took back and I go, this has not really happened to me before. In California, no. I go, so I stopped talking about business. We talked about family and about culture and differences in life, and it just made me think like never before. What is this tendency that builds stress in me that's constantly looking for some business? And I need to learn how to listen more, and I need to learn how to soak up what has worked for other people, and I need to kind of just learn to not think so much and to kind of absorb. And there's even a word over there, they call it fiacca, and it's it's an Italian word, but it means something very different in Dalmatia. And I think it's part of a secret of life, frankly. Fiacca, in the context that it's been explained to me, it means I just don't feel like working. I just don't want to work. Like today, I don't want to work. It's not necessarily like, I think in Italy it might be more like a laziness or something, a different meaning. But there, it's important. And those 2-hour or 3-hour coffees, talking with somebody, it's important. Yeah, when witness the time in the coffee shop, I would see people coming back from a lot of sailors, or not sailors, but young men that leave and go, or young women and men that leave for work and come back. And so you would see these reuniting experiences of people that hadn't seen each other for a couple of years or maybe just a season. And it reminded you that we're all in the same boat, right? And how important it is to be open to making a new way for yourself and new friends in that way. So to date, still after I got my Portuguese visa, I didn't have to do the Schengen issues, but to this day I still stay in touch with most of the people I met there. D16 has changed hands because I became really great friends with the owners and many of the people that work there, the co-workers. And of course, my other fellow artist friend, Joseph, just fantastic, and another friend, Anna, who, they're just fantastic, and Gita, and all these amazing people at different coffee houses, because you got to rotate it a bit, right? And all of a sudden, you know the whole neighborhood. And yeah, very fascinating. So my message of this video, I guess, is to don't be afraid of you will miss your friends, and I still stay in touch with my friends in California for sure, and I look forward to them visiting. I am still active in business, so I still have clients and so forth that I talk to, and I'm in the intellectual property like management business, so I have their brands and other people that I'm still friends with, and I help. But don't be afraid of the friend part or the lack of it. You get nostalgic for all the years of your close friends that you grew up with. But part of a benefit, an incredible benefit of this whole experience, at least at my age, is we'll roll an address book. That name will date me, but an address book. Your address book will double or triple, and you will learn all of these other things you didn't really know before. Like, who would have thought of, runaway capitalism or outrageously too far to the left communism or something, and all these isms that get misconstrued and ideologies that gets messed up with men and advocates and dictators or whatever. At the end of the day, everyone just wants to not be alone and wants to be in love and wants to be a good parent or a good child or a good sibling and care about each other. And ironically too, from this whole experience, I'm like friends from very far away. I've got great friends from Australia and great friends in South Africa, and we still talk, like, once a week at least, or maybe every day even sometimes. And so it's kind of like wherever you go, there you are. But it's important to work on what you are, right? And your understanding of as I said in the other video, of the we that happens. It's less, somehow, I think Americans or Californians, or at least I can only speak about myself, somehow early on when we were doing duck and cover in the Cold War, and you kind of had this vision of the hierarchy of life was God, your father, your biological father, and maybe the president, and then all of a sudden we just are following. And, and John Wayne was always right, and I just mean, you change, and I guess every country has. I'm not an anti-nationalist or anything, and if anything, I'm more conservative in most of my outlooks, but I'm extremely open, and now I've learned that this concept of friendship and friendism, if you will, and that we're in things together. It fits, right, in a lot of ways. For example, leadership that really is trying to help people, not themselves. And it's fascinating I spend time, most of the time I spend is now in Portugal, which is a very unique political environment. And it's mixed, right, a lot of parties. And on the main Avenida Liberdade in Lisbon, there's a giant Communist Party office headquarters, a big sickle, and a lot of flags. Every political party has their flag. They do their thing. But in the end of the day, I remember I was in Cascais, and I was walking, and maybe I mentioned this in another video, but I heard this funny radio, this like whatever, like this sounded static, and I look around, and I was with my attorney, and we looked, and she said, "Oh, come here. That's Marcello, that's the president of the country, walking." One guy with one security guy, one radio you could hear. He was walking with his towel and his shorts, and he was going to go swim. And I was going, how can this be? That's the president of the country, and he's going for a swim with one guy in security. And I was thinking, okay, now this is the place. She goes, yeah, he was my professor in law school. Okay, this is a magical, fantastic place. This is the way it should be. And then I was also remember time in Zurich or Switzerland, someplace here, and someone else was a hush or whatever, and on the train was the president. And I guess they commute it takes public transport. And you can hardly even know who the president is over here because they rotate so much. The federal government has so little power compared to the what they call the cantons or the states. And so I go, okay, well, that's a good thing. So these two countries, one that has 10 million population, one that has 8 million population, very interesting things they have in common. In a way, they take themselves very, very seriously, but within the context of goals of living a happy life. And of course, Switzerland is much more evolved because of the time of Salazar in Portugal, and Croatia has its own rules. Its own development, also relatively new. In both cases, there's this evolution, I suppose, going on, but the things I found in common of all three of those places, which is clearly where I've spent more time, the most, of course, in Portugal, but the things in common are community, a kindness to the people around you, healthcare. I didn't used to think that healthcare should be like a right or a civil, I remember all the talking points in America, and I don't want to get political here at all, but I used to think to myself, gee, everybody should pay their way. It shouldn't be free. And I don't want to pay taxes for somebody else or something. But then I realized, my parents, mom had Alzheimer's for 10 years. my dad's own health problems in his 80s, after both of my parents passed away. And I remember, by that time, it was incredibly expensive to manage the care, incredibly expensive. And I remember times were tight there towards in the end. And then I remember the kindness of it. And like hospice, they said, only pay us if you can afford it, or only pay, you don't really have to pay us. And it was the kindness in that end times reminded me of how important everyone is. And then this concept of you really shouldn't, in my mind, you shouldn't be forced into bankruptcy or becoming a pauper because you get sick. So for me, the main thing, all three of these places I spend time in is they all have health care. They have varying taxation. Portugal has, I suppose, less of a middle class, and lots of people making $1,000 a month or $1,500 a month. But they also have a lot of people making $10,000 a month, and increasingly new money that keeps flowing in, and entrepreneurial spirit like incredible in Portugal. And the young people, smart as can be, and technologically savvy, and startups happening, and co-working happening, and I found myself, I guess, an overall recipe there to plug myself into getting to know the baristas at various coffee shops. If you're in Lisbon, Fabrica is a great place. And if you're in Cascais, a great lunch place is Tesoro, it's called. Both are just fantastic. And I'm sure in your own exploration, you're going to find coffee houses and places to eat that are more on the intimate side, where you can actually talk and get to know. And people, those cultures, they, with the exception of many of the tourists, those people actually, the locals actually care, and they want to learn. And so I guess what I'm really trying to say, and in Switzerland, the middle class is so huge, and the crime is so low in both cases. Portugal and Switzerland, there's really no crime. And somehow things happen. Either, if you're not, also in Portugal, I'm sorry to jump around like this, but these are how the thoughts come to me, I guess. In Portugal, people love to party. They want to have a good drink, they want to sing, they want to dance. I've been to quite a few family events, and it is typical that someone just starts singing or playing a guitar, and then a dance will happen, and there's something about not chasing the dollar all the time, that brings peace. Of course, I guess that makes perfect sense, but somehow we've lost it, or the tribalism of it, or I don't understand it really. But the breaking down of walls and the meeting of new friends, it enhances your life in ways you've never thought, ever, and opens your brain up to. I never could have thought. I've had hours of discussions. I was from Orange County, right? So, and a very Republican family. I've sat and talked for hours about Tito, right? Or about Salazar, or about Franco, or whatever. You just listen and learn, and realize that it's, at least for me, it's important to enlarge your life and your scope of thinking. And I guess it's easier now, at least I'm about to turn 65. So at this point in my life, I work, but it's not like 8 hours a day. So there's freedom and time to listen. And if there's anything to look forward to in this expat experience, for example, Portugal, if that's where you choose, and I highly recommend it, be prepared to realize that it's important to deconstruct and let go of many of those kind of tribal things, or brainwashing, or I don't really know if that's the right word, but it's important to let go and listen and learn, because there's peace in that. You can debate intelligently, you can cite references, you do your research, you know what it is. It's not about just because I think this is one way or another way. And by being open and loving and kind, you expand yourself. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be this weird. I just wanted to share, there's no reason to be afraid of missing those people that are now closest to you. Yes, physically, it is, you're not in proximity. They certainly can visit, but I guess it depends upon your personality. But for me, I find this time of life to be just completely full of discovery and adventure, and learning what makes you tick, and learning what you love the most. Yeah. So I guess that's it. Thank you, guys. See you later. Any questions, please. If anybody needs help, or you can go to my website. It's called, the easier is, it's just Weedn.law. You can, WEEDN.LAW. I'm not an attorney, but I do a lot of intellectual property law work. So anyway, you'll see stuff there. If you needed to reach me, you could drop me a line. I'm happy to help. I know plenty of attorneys that I would introduce you to, should you need that. But yeah, and if anybody has business questions about how to make it all work once you're an expat, that I'm really experienced with. So anyway, take care. Ciao.